Hi there. In this video I'm going to show how to build a VR rig from scratch. So the VR rig that you're using inside here is actually just pre-made with a bunch of objects that you can just build from scratch. And so let's see how to actually create a VR rig from scratch. So for instance, if you want to create your own hands or your own kind of your own layout, this is how you do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Entities here on the toolbox, and I'm going to go to Node from the bottom list. And I'm going to create a node of the space. Now this node is going to represent our calibrated center space. So wherever you calibrate your VR space, this will represent the center of that space. So all the other elements like your hands and your head are all relative to this position. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this and say Edit Local Space. And now we're going to add all the components like the hands and the HMD camera that are going to be relative to this calibrated space. So I'm going to go into cameras here. I'm going to create a new camera. This is going to be our HMD camera. And then I'm going to just draw a couple of boxes to represent my left hand and another one to represent my right hand. I'm going to right click to exit draw mode. So now we have these three items, and so our next order of business is to bind those to the virtual reality components. So how do we do that? Well, to do that, we're going to start with the camera. I'm going to click on the camera. I'm going to undock the property editor, and I'm going to click this little button here to add a new attribute to the camera, and I'm going to add this track device player controller. And what this attribute does is it transfers the position of a physical item like the headset to the virtual position of the camera. And in fact, if we look at its properties, it's already set to head-mounted display. So it's already going to assign this camera's position to be relative to the virtual reality head-mounted display's location. So let's repeat that process for the left and the right hand. So I'm going to click on the left hand, and I'm going to again add track device player controller to it. And then I'm going to have to click on it and set it explicitly to be the left-hand controller. So that'll now become the left-hand controller's position. Do the same with the right hand. New track device player controller. And I'm going to set that to the right-hand controller. So now if I go into VR mode, you'll see that they are already taking on the position of the controllers are now tracking with the headset, with the actual positions of the devices in the space. Okay, so that's let's keep building up on this example. I'm going to exit VR mode. They all snap into a default configuration when we do that. The next thing we want to do is let's make it so when we push a button, the left hand, when we push the button on the left hand, it prints out a message. Let's say. So I'm going to click on the left hand controller. Oh, one other thing we want to do actually is we want to make sure on both the hands we set the rigid body movability to false. In this way, physics doesn't take over and try to move the boxes on its own. Only we can control the boxes with the physical controller. So make sure you set the movability of both hands to false on the rigid bodies. So let's add a control now to the left hand. So when we push a button on the left hand, it performs something. So I'm going to click on the track device player controller of the left hand, and I'm going to hit this little plus button here. I'm going to add a new on-off button user input. I'm going to give this a name. We can name it whatever you want. In this case, it should be the name of the action. So this will be like print message. That's the name of our input. And I'm gonna have to assign the binding in VR mode. So because when you're outside of VR mode, the VR controllers are turned off. So I'm going to enter VR mode, and now I'm going to set the default binding to be the left trigger button. So when I push the VR controller's left index trigger, it's going to call this function onPrint message. And finally, let's implement onPrint message. We're just going to have it print hello. When I push a button, I push the button on the left, and we'll do only if b value is true. So only when we push down will it do this, but not when we release the button, when b value is false. Okay, and the only other thing we have to do is we have to assign this parent node that we created as our viewport's player controller, playable node. So that way it knows that this is the object we want to currently control using our player inputs. So to do this, I'm just going to right click on the node, on the parent node, and just set it as a viewport player node. This is important because if we don't do this, we're not telling the symmetry which object we want to control. So we do that, and now when we hit play and we're in VR mode, when I push the left button, it prints hello, and all of our objects are now tracked. So hopefully that shows you a little bit about how to create a VR rig from scratch. And so thanks for watching.